Hey everyone, welcome back to New Slang. I hope all of your weeks have started off right. I am music journalist Thomas Mooney, and you're listening to episode 99, where I am joined by Daniel Fluitt, lead vocalist and de facto leader of one of the greatest bands to come out of Lubbock, Texas, the Thrift Store Cowboys. If you've been following me or my writing for a while, you'll know how pivotal I believe Thrift Store Cowboys are for the modern Lubbock Sound, which I consider the new Lubbock Sound era, if you will, as everything that's happened since 2000. I'd interviewed a handful of bands before, but really Daniel and Thrift Store Cowboys were that first quote-unquote Lubbock band that I had ever really had any interaction with. There's always been this bit of mysticism to Thrift Store Cowboys. It was partly the traditional alt-country sound of that era. Think like Whiskey Town, Old 97, Sunvolt, Wilco, that type of alt-country. But there was always this other atmospheric post-rock element that was happening, where it also felt like Explosions in the Sky or This Will Destroy You, and they were never as heavy as those bands, but there was always an atmospheric edge to that. It was like a sepia-tone desert theme. They always felt just a little bit left of center for your traditional alt-country, as if they were like an art rock band doing alt-country. Their albums also captured that dry desert air just a little bit more so than a lot of the other artists that have come out of Lubbock. Like, I don't really think of the desert when I hear Joe Ely or a Waylon song. I just think of Lubbock when I think of those guys. Thrift Store, though, they just always felt a little bit more from the desert. And I'm only thinking about this now, but I think that that's probably because most of the band aren't specifically from Lubbock itself. Like in Daniel's case, he's from Post, Texas, which I know a lot of y'all are thinking, well, that's just the same thing as the South Plains. But in reality, that's where you drop off the Cap Rock. It's a little bit more canyon-y out there. It's not just rolling plains. To get a great sense of that, go and look up a photo from space of like the Llano Estacado. I feel like that upbringing has to have played a major aspect into why this band sounds the way they do. I could definitely ramble on about Thrift Store Cowboys and their music for forever, but we'll go ahead and keep it a little bit short. If you've never heard Thrift Store, I would encourage you to go and start with Lay Low While Crawling or Creeping. That record just sounds like everything you'd ever want from a record about and for West Texas. Before we get started though, go ahead and hit that subscribe button wherever you may be listening. Spotify, iTunes, Google Podcasts, Stitcher Radio, etc. and so on. Go follow me on Twitter and Instagram @_newslang. Go give New Slang a like on Facebook as well. They're all great places to further the music conversation and keep up with what I have coming out both writing and podcast-wise. All right, here is Daniel Fluitt.
I guess I've been starting all of these out with a little bit of how you've handled the pandemic, the quarantine. And obviously with you're not only an artist, but you're throughout the years have been working with Sugarlands Distilling.
Right.
Have been like going to all these festivals, and obviously this knocks out like basically all live music. What have y'all?
Yeah.
What have you handled this? What's the game plan? What did you guys change to? What have you been doing?
So for Sugarlands, we are still employed, thankfully, I guess, but yeah, so everything that we had on the books for 2020, all the festivals and events, have either been postponed to the fall, or have been anything that's coming up, or, that has already happened or is coming up in like June or July. Basically everything is getting canceled. And the way it's looking, I don't see that they're going to be able to have any kind of large gathering or festival or event or anything like that in 2020 period. So I would totally, I think probably there's already been some festivals that have canceled like in the last week or so. I think you're going to start seeing a lot more. And I think once we get into like July, that's going to be the telltale sign, because then once a Bonnaroo or a Coachella, any of those, the big ones, Austin City Limits, any of those cancel, then I'm pretty sure you're going to see almost everything cancel after that. So for us, we've just been just kind of doing a lot of a lot of bullshit. Just kind of today we were building fat packs that we're sending out to our distributors for Christmas. So they're like these candy cane fat packs, and they suck putting together. So it's basically like doing assembly line stuff. We've been doing a lot of cleaning, organizing, doing some inventory on our stuff. But we're slowly running out of things to do for sure. So we're just kind of wait and see right now to, see what's going on. We have an event that we put on called the Roaming Man Elevated Evening that we did last year. And we still have it scheduled for October, but it's still up in the air. Again, we're just kind of waiting to see what everybody else is doing. And also, if we think it's going to be safe by then to put it on. So yeah, just kind of a lot of just work that it's not really my job, but they're paying me money, so I guess I better do something, right?
Yeah. All the stuff that you don't want to do is probably being done now. Like you said, counting inventory and stuff like that.
Oh yeah. None of this stuff is very fun at all. It's like, it makes me miss working festivals and events so bad. It's just like, but I mean, that's like every one of my friends and everything like that. Because a lot of the folks that live in Knoxville, there's a pretty big contingent of people that events and festivals directly impacts, from crew members to tour managing to, people that are actually, putting on festivals and events. So, I mean, there's just a lot of people that, just are trying to have to think outside the box at this point to, try and get something done. So.
Yeah. Like we think about this all affecting the artists. And of course, when you do that, you think of the front man or the front woman of all these bands, but like there's so much behind them that is affected too. It's not just like the lead singer, it's the band, it's the sound engineers, it's the thing that we had done, me and Charlie did for the Monday Night Lights. It was about everyone else. It's there's just so many people that are affected by this that you maybe didn't necessarily think of when all these festivals and these shows and everything.
Exactly. And I mean, and with like, the musicians and stuff, the one good thing, at least there's an outlet for some of that stuff. So you can still put out music. You can still do like, a live stream to try to get a little bit of money. But, for your folks that are behind the scenes, your crew folks, your festival organizers, your sound guys, all that stuff, they're just without a job right now. There's nothing they can really do, other than just kind of sit and wait. So.
This episode is sponsored by Wicker's Mesquite Smoked Jalapeno Jelly. It's owned and operated by my buddy Wes Wicker, who makes the jelly in small batches for the best quality and freshness. He smokes the peppers with mesquite and uses pure cane sugar to make the jelly. What you get is this great blend of smoky, sweet, and spicy. It's addictively savory. For those uninitiated, Wicker's is a great addition to any chef's kitchen. Part of what makes Wicker's so great is just how versatile it really is. For starters, it makes a great meat glaze. Throw it on a batch of hot wings, use it on some pork ribs, some pork chops, really whatever you can think of. Eat it on biscuits, cornbread, bagels, or toast. Throw it on a ham or turkey sandwich. Another super simple but effective way is to get some cream cheese, throw some Wicker's on top, and then grab your favorite cracker. Wicker's is currently stocked at a handful of places in Lubbock and on the South Plains, as well as some Fort Worth and DFW locations. But the easiest way to get your hands on a jar is to head over to wickerstx.com. That's WICKERSTX.com. I'll throw a link into the show notes for good measure. They currently come in 2 varieties, original and now hot, if you need just a little bit more kick in your bite. You can order anything from 1 jar to a case of 12, whatever fits your needs. Again, that's wickerstx.com. Okay, back to the show.
you've had your ear to the ground on a lot of great music that has been coming out simply because, you've been working these festivals. You obviously used to work at Rouse Records here in Lubbock.
Right.
You've been in a band. You've been all over the place. What I guess like what has been like the thing that like you look back and you kind of go, oh, I saw insert name here before they became, rock star or what, like a household name in the, I guess.
Yeah, I mean, well, one that just kind of jumped in my brain right now is just like the time when Jason Isbell used to come through Lubbock and play the Blue Light.
Right.
I mean, that just isn't going to happen anymore. And there's lots of bands that I didn't get to see, but a lot of huge bands that have come through Knoxville that are, I mean, Chris Stapleton played Preservation Pub, like the Avett Brothers played the pub. And it's just like, it's weird to me to even think about having a band like that, actually playing in such a small, venue. But, yeah, I mean, another one that, I feel particularly proud about is, when I booked, and it was the first show that I ever actually booked and had to promote. And it was, when we brought Devotchka to Jake's and we opened for him. And it was kind of terrifying because, I have to pay a certain amount to the band that's guaranteed anyways. And so just, the week before, just kind of like sitting on pins and needles, waiting, hoping that people would, come in and get tickets. And sure enough, like the day of the show, all these people from, people drove from Austin and Dallas to come and watch that show, and it ended up selling out. So it actually worked out really well. But like, they're one of those bands too, they don't play that often in the US, and most of the venues they play are all, large theaters and stuff like that.
Yeah. For some reason, Lubbock has always been a like day of buy tickets town.
I think that's like, everywhere, to be honest,
really? Okay.
Yeah. I mean, it's the same thing here as well. I mean, unless it's just like a huge band, playing, Thompson Bowling or the Spirit Arena or something like that. Or there's they're pretty big, decent venues here that are run by Live Nation. And a lot of those shows, some of those shows will sell out, in like 30 minutes or something like that. But for a lot of those, yeah, it's a lot of day of tickets here as well.
Yeah. You mentioned Jason, and I think like this is going to be like the I don't know, like the mythical show of Lubbock is when he played. You used to do those. You used to have like a Sunday night thing at Schooners, and
yeah,
it was during Christmas, and he played and Amanda played, and you guys had like an impromptu thrift store show. I think that's going to be like the show that everyone was there. But
right, you're either there or you weren't there. But if you weren't there, then you'll say that you were. Yeah. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
That was pretty awesome. I miss doing those shows at Schooners a lot too, because it's just kind of there. We always played on Sunday or Monday night, and there's not very many venues that are going to book bands on a Sunday or Monday night. So we used to get great touring bands that just needed somewhere to play on a Sunday, like a slow Sunday or Monday. And some of those shows turned out to be really, really great. So I miss those a lot.
The thing on that Jason show, I remember like it was either like Christmas or it was either Christmas Eve, Christmas Day, or the day after Christmas, something like that. And the one thing that surprises me most is like I don't have any fucking photos of that show. I didn't take like one photo on my phone. And it was still kind of in the I guess it was. I mean, I guess phones back then it still had photos on it, but it wasn't so prevalent like it is now, where everybody takes, like, that's a huge thing at festivals. You'll see thousands of photos of a certain band or different things like that. But yeah, I think everybody was just so like into the music that
I think everybody forgot to take photos. I know I didn't take any either. So
Like this may have been like when I had a BlackBerry still, like that long
Yeah.
ago, because
yeah,
it was definitely before social media. And I remember you had just texted me that afternoon or that evening or something like that saying, hey, come to the show. Jason Isbell's going to be playing, yada, yada. And so then like me and one of my friends went, and it was just one of those shows like, you know, for free,
yeah,
Jason Isbell, acoustic, Amanda on fiddle, and like just, you know, it was just a special thing. Like one of the things I remember specifically about that show too was that like Jason played a few covers in there, and like that's something that he just really doesn't do.
exactly. Yeah.
It
But he was just, you know, for him, it was just fun, you know, and that's why, I mean, he's still, you know, they're two of my favorite people in the world because, you know, they haven't changed at all. They haven't, you know, they're huge rock stars now, and but they're still down to earth, and he's always treats everybody, you know, the same as he always has. So, you know, for him, it was just, you know, he likes to play music and it was fun. So I was super stoked that he, you know, even wanted to do it. So.
Yeah. Like I guess like the only times I've seen Jason have been here in Lubbock, and it's that Schooner show and a few times at Blue Light. And like that last time he played was right around Southeastern.
Mm-hmm.
And like it was like a Wednesday or something like that. So it was an older crowd, and it was like you could drop the proverbial pin in Blue Light and hear it, you know, and it was just like there was that moment where you just knew like, oh, this is like the last time he's going to be in here. Like,
for sure. I mean, like he comes through Knoxville now usually about once a year. And he'll do 2 shows at the Tennessee Theater. And Tennessee Theater holds about 1,600. And I mean, he sells out both shows in, you know, 30 minutes. And I mean, and he could have easily, you know, one of those guys, he could probably play a whole week of shows anywhere and probably still sell them out. You know, he did that at the Ryman last year. He did 7 shows in a row and sold all of them out. So, I've talked to him about it, and, you know, just kind of asking him, you know, where, you know, because at a certain point, it's just like, you know, you need to start playing like arenas, you know, he's done a few arenas and stuff like that, but he really enjoys just kind of doing a theater show more so than, you know, an arena. It just sounds better. It's more intimate. So I think he's just fine and happy just, you know, doing 2 or 3 shows in a certain place and just staying there, you know. So
yeah, I think in a lot of ways, like you wind up saving some money anyway, simply because you're not having to buy gas for like those 2 days or whatever, you know.
Right. Yeah. You're not having to travel. You're not having to, you know, you're not having to unload and load, you know, all of your, you know, because now I think he travels in like 3 buses, and they have like a semi trailer and all that stuff. So it's just less
overhead,
just overhead, and less having to, you know, time and, you know, setting up and driving and doing all that stuff. So.
Yeah, you did remind me of like one of my favorite questions. It's what band like could play in the same town, like the same venue, like the longest, like the most consecutive like sellout streak. You know what I mean? Like how many days would Jason Isbell be able to sell out Blue Light in a row?
Oh, I mean,
hypothetically, you know what I mean?
Exactly. It's like, I think he could probably do like easily a 2 to 3 week residency. And I mean, the problem is you'd have, you know, some people that would buy that ticket for every day. You know, the same people would just go and watch that show. So I would say, you know, yeah, there. And then here, if the Avett Brothers played like the Pub, I mean, they could do a month straight, easy, you know, no problem.
Yeah, I think that would be and like that's something that will never happen, obviously. But I love the idea of some band just kind of playing the same venue every damn day. I've tried to get like Blue Light to. I think Blue Light would do it. Is like let's just try and do like a a week where it's the same artist, but like in different capacities. Like you would still have like Monday night doing songwriter night, but they would host it. And then that next night would be like a song swap with a few of their buddies, you know. And then like the next night would be like a stripped down version. And you know what I mean? Like,
right. And then like all culminate on like a Friday, like main, like full band show or something like that.
Yeah. I think that would be a really cool thing to do.
Oh yeah. I mean, that's why I love the Blue Light. I mean, like that when we did that Live and Breathing week, it was, I mean, they went head over heels for all of those bands and were just so great to work with. That's why I've just, no matter what, whenever we, you know, come back to Lubbock, we always want to play the Blue Light. I don't care. Or like people are like, well, maybe you should move to a bigger venue. I was like, no, I don't care. I'm still going to play here.
Yeah.
It's fine with me.
That's another thing. The Live and Breathing. I think you guys were a little ahead on Shaky Graves.
Yeah. I had no idea who he was. It's funny because, so we had, Whiskey Shivers, who are one of our really good friends, and they're a great band. So they were playing, and there was some guy that ended up having to drop out, and I guess they were talking to Jess, and they were like, well, you know, my buddy, his band's called Shaky Graves, and just asking if he could just, you know, jump on the bill. And I'd never heard of him. I was like, yeah, sure. I mean, if you guys think he's good, then I'm sure that he's fine. And then of course he like completely stole all of the shit, you know, every show that we had, his show was by far the best, you know? And of course with Live and Breathing, the videos that they put out, his has been played almost as much as, than I think he's up there with almost, you know, the Avery Brothers, for like the top 1 or 2 for all the Live and Breathing shows total. So yeah, it was very, very lucky because we had, again, no idea who he was at the time.
Yeah.
Funny story about that is, so he had a really good time when he was here. And so that was like the last night of the shows, because it was Rodney and Shaky Graves and Whiskey Shivers and Chris Hudson, which pretty awesome to have all 4 of those people on one night of, you know, one show. Anyways, so of course everybody's having a good time. Well, we end up settling up at the end of the night and go out, and I parked right in front of my car was like a merch bin, and I look in it and it's all the Shaky vinyl and t-shirts. So I grabbed that, and he's back at the house. They're partying or whatever. And then, so the next day they leave to go back to Austin, and I get this call from Alejandro, and he's just freaking out because he left all of his guitars at the Blue Light. And those are, I mean, and these are like, you know, $1,000 guitars. And so we were just trying to figure out how to get them back. And then my buddy, who used to play in this band, Down 1450, he was actually living in Austin, and he was working for George Strait. He basically was, he built out George Strait's like traveling museum that goes around with all of his shows. Well, George Strait was playing, I guess, on that Tuesday or whatever. And so we ended up just getting him and packing it up with all of these, you know, priceless George Strait items in this like traveling museum. And he ended up taking it back and giving them back to Shaky. But it was funny because I ran into him. I think it was at Pilgrimage Festival a couple of years ago in Franklin, Tennessee. And he had just played, and we were backstage, and I walked up to him, and I was just like, I bet you don't remember me. And he's like, yeah, you look familiar. I was like, you remember that time when you played Lubbock and you left your guitars there? And he was like, holy shit, dude. You know, just like, thank you so much for getting those back to me and everything. He completely remembered right off the bat, but it's really funny. Just like, yeah.
Yeah. I remember like when he, because obviously you guys invited me to watch the sessions be recorded. And
right.
When he got on stage in that barn and was kind of just, you know, sound checking, getting ready, there was like, you know, 10 people in that room, and it was just kind of like, oh shit, this is going to be fucking special when he started playing, you know, and you didn't even know,
Oh.
you never even heard the songs before, but you were just kind of like, you know, the hair on your arm started raising up.
Exactly. Yeah.
Not because
He
it was like in January and it was freezing cold.
right. Yeah. No, yeah, you could tell like once he started playing and, it just sounded so good. It was just like, okay, yeah, this is going to be great.
Yeah. You mentioned Rodney Parker, one of our favorite people.
Oh yeah. Same. He's definitely one of my best friends, and it's really cool for me because we actually, the first show Rodney Parker ever played was with us. Brooks was actually booking a venue in Santa Fe called the Paramount, and so it was our first time to play there. It was a really awesome room, and it was Devotchka and then us. It was Devotchka was headlining, we were the middle band, and Rodney was opening acoustic. And that was the first time I ever met Rodney, and he played. And then, so I've seen him just kind of grow from, you know, him just doing solo to his first band show, which was really bad. But then, you know, just like kept getting better and better. And then, you know, once they put, you know, the Blow the Soot Out is a great album and it sounds amazing. And I was just like, wow, that album is fantastic for your first album. But when he put out the Lonesome Dirge, it just blew me away. Just like, holy shit, dude, you're about to be famous. And of course, you know, same thing. He said the same thing, you know, after hearing Lay Low while crawling or creeping. And of course, neither one of us are famous, but you know, that's just kind of the way that it goes, I guess.
Yeah. I think like the Lonesome Dirge is like one of the most important and influential records in Texas music.
Oh yeah. I would totally agree because I mean, it's just, to me, you know, everybody talks about Turnpike, and Turnpike they were great band, but I think that, you know, they probably wouldn't be Turnpike if they hadn't, you know, had listened to the Lonesome Dirge. There's a lot of bands, I think, in Texas that, you know, kind of took, because it sounded different than anything that came out at that time. You know, it was still Texas country, I guess, but it just had so many layers and you know, just different elements of other types of music involved in it and I mean, and the songwriting alone is just fantastic. I mean, some of those songs like Brother, I mean, that song kills me when I listen to it.
Yeah. I've talked with like Evan and RC about how like, I guess, influential in Paramount Rodney's songwriting was for them as songwriters, because you can definitely see them as like that next wave, that next
exactly,
you know, that next version of what Rodney was doing as far as the storytelling and like that you mentioned, like the layers. Like there's so many, like they were almost like, you know, you said like are they a Texas country band? I don't know. I mean, like they play country and rock and roll in Texas, so I guess by proxy, by definition, maybe, I don't know. But they always felt like an indie rock band. Like they always felt like they had listened to a bunch of like indie rock stuff that was popular in the early 2000s, like The Strokes and Interpol and like The National, and like took those kind of guitars and applied them to like country music.
I totally agree. I mean, I think that they, you know, yeah, because when it came out, you know, and I know that they were like really trying to push it in Texas, and I still tell them to this day, every time I talk to them, I'm just like, man, you guys need to come out to Tennessee sometime, you know, do like an East Coast tour. Cause I think they, you know, they would go really, really well here. You know, I mean, they would do great anywhere they played, basically. You know, it's just a matter of, you know, give them a little kick in the butt and get on the road.
Yeah.
Which I understand that too. Cause I mean, here we are, you know, I haven't toured in many, many years, and, you know, and that's okay. I mean, everybody gets older and things happen, and I understand that, but it's just kind of, but they're one of my favorite bands. So it's just like, I want to hear them play all the time, of course.
Yeah.
You know,
One of the things like we were, I guess like one of the things that I've always been talked or told about was, you know, that tour that you and Rodney and One Wolf went on.
Yeah.
That was like, you know, like a very, what I've heard, I don't know if it's been romanticized more simply because it's in the past, but obviously that bill would have been incredible to see. What do you remember most about those times?
Oh, I mean, it was wild and crazy, just like you could imagine. I mean, because we Rodney had his van and trailer, and then us and One Wolf took our van. And so I remember just when we were about to leave, we had to wake up and drive literally from Lubbock straight to Tucson, which is a good 15 hour drive. And so we had packed a lot of our, musical equipment and stuff in Rodney's trailer, but of course we weren't thinking about bags and everything. So Rodney had left the night before. And so we wake up to, load everybody into the van, and there's like literally no room to put any of the bags. So it's just like stacks of bags in between people. You couldn't even see the person sitting next to you. It's just like people were having to hold bags in their laps and stuff. So it was ridiculous. And then, but it was great because, we had some really great shows. We had some really terrible shows as well. But that's just kind of how it goes with, being on the road. And I think back to it now, and it's just like, I feel sorry for all the people that we ended up crashing on their floors. Cause it's not like, it's one thing to have a band of, 4 or 5 people, crash with you, but it's a totally different thing when you're getting like 14 or 15 people, sleeping like sardines on the floor and everything. So, but it was great. We all had a good time. We didn't die. We didn't, starve to death. I think we ended up maybe breaking even. So that's about the best case scenario you can come up with on a 3-band tour. So, it's definitely one of those tours I'll always look back on fondly, and glad that we did it, and glad that everybody, all 3 bands were those 3 bands that got to go, so.
Yeah. Did, was Iron Man on that tour? Was he part of
Iron Man, he was definitely on the tour. He was our merch guy. So, but he was definitely, being Iron Man as well, kicking ass and taking names.
Yeah.
While he's there.
Why his name is Iron Man.
Exactly. There's a reason why he's called Iron Man, for sure. Yeah. Yeah, I love Iron Man. Best story I ever have about Iron Man is, you want to hear it? It's great.
Absolutely. Yeah.
So I was playing at Schooners one time, and there was a crowd of people. So at Schooners, there's this big round table up at the top right next to the stage, where there were all of these just assholes there, just yelling out Freebird and, doing the same old shit and telling us to play something that they know. And I'm just playing off, just like, yeah, don't know that one, but here's one that sounds just like it. And then I just play whatever. Well, Iron Man, is, 3 sheets to the wind, having a good time. And so he gets up, and I was playing a slow song, and he gets up to dance with a young lady. And I don't know if you don't know Iron Man, if anytime Iron Man's really drunk and he tries to dance, it's almost guaranteed that he's going to spin her and probably fall down or slip and fall or something like that. Well, sure enough, he's dancing with this girl, and he goes to spin her, and he falls into one of the tables that was holding one of the speakers on the right side. And he just crumples like a ball on the floor, and the speaker flies up in the air, but ends up landing on the ground straight up. So I just kept playing. And Iron Man looks up at me with the craziest look I've ever seen in his face. And I'm just like, oh shit, what is Iron Man going to do? And he gets up, turns, and runs full speed at this table and dive bombs the whole table. Everybody's drink just flies all in their laps. Just fucking dive bombs them. And of course they end up kicking Iron Man out, banning him for like 6 months. But everybody who sat at that table ended up getting up and leaving. So I was just like, way to go, Iron Man. You did it, you know? Got those assholes out of here. So that was one of the best Iron Man stories.
That's like the I'm sure you're familiar with Lord of the Rings, you know, when they're at Helm's Deep, and there's like the one weakness at Helm's Deep is like that hole. And so like then they send an orc to like bomb it or whatever, and like none of them can shoot him with an arrow. Like Legolas can't hit him, and he just like dives in there and it blows up. And then of course that's what that sounds like. Just the ultimate sacrifice right there.
It was the ultimate sacrifice by Iron Man. I will always hold him up highly in my book because I mean, for many, many things, but that was probably one of the coolest things I've ever seen when I was playing live ever. So
yeah. What were those early Thrift Store Cowboy days like? What was those very at the beginning? What were those days like?
So when we first kind of started with Amanda and everybody, we were all still going to Texas Tech. So a lot of it was, you know, we would end up booking shows on like Thursday, Friday, and Saturday. So we would everybody kind of had to schedule, you know, their classes and everything so we could get out early on Thursday and, you know, try to leave around noon so we could get there. But it was a lot of fun. I mean, we were just we didn't know what we were doing at all. So, you know, just traveling around, playing as many places as we possibly could, lots of honky tonks, lots of opening for Texas country bands that never listened to any of our songs ever. So not going to name any names, but yeah, so it was a lot of fun. I mean, lots of drinking beer, lots of punching each other in the face when we get drunk. Yeah, I mean, there's lots of really good stories that I probably could tell, but I probably shouldn't. Yeah, like me and Jeff would always just go and we'd get drunk and we just walk out to like the backyard or something and we just kind of trade shots in the face just to make you feel alive, you know? And now I look back at it and it's just like, well, that's stupid. I mean, but also, I mean, I was an idiot then too, because I didn't play guitar, so I wasn't tethered by anything. So I used to just go completely apeshit on stage. You know, we're sitting there, you know, now of course our music is a lot more like indie rock and different, you know, things like that. But back then it was way more, you know, just country. And so it's just like playing country music and I'm just running around like an idiot on stage, just screaming in the mic and jumping off of speakers and all sorts of crazy shit. That's how I ended up tearing my ACL. We played a gig at Cujo's, which horrible gig. One of the worst gigs we've ever had to play. And sorry, I'm going outside real quick. Damn dogs. So we were. So we were. Sorry, you can cut some of that stuff out. But so we were playing at Cujo's, and you know, it's just a lot of frat dudes there, and nobody was listening. No one cared, and we were playing, and I was just getting hammered drunk because you know, whatever. I was just going to get drunk and have fun, and I just was yelling at people and screaming in the mic and pointing at people when I was singing, and we ended up driving most of the people out of the venue. So at the end of the night, I had already jumped off of the stage there. There's like a bar, so the stage is about, I'd say 3 feet off the ground, but then there's a bar on top of it. And I'd already jumped off of that, just because I'm an idiot. And then I remember we took a break and it was like our last set. And I ended up getting a gin and tonic and just drinking all of it. And I was so drunk. And I remember getting on to the thing to jump off, but I was drunk. So I was, you know, I was either going to fall back onto the stage or I was just going to have to jump. And so I ended up just jumping, and I jumped way too high and came down and landed awkwardly on one leg, and it just completely tore my ACL and MCL. And I had to play the rest of the set on my back with my leg elevated up onto a chair. So horrible.
Not to laugh at your expense, but yeah, the laying down. What was that a full band show?
Oh yeah.
Okay, so like what was everyone else doing? Like, were they just kind of like?
Yeah, well, Daniel fucked his knee up, so we just kept playing. Yeah, it was pretty bad. And then I ended up doing it again at Green Hall and screwing my knee up there. It was like the one time we played at Green Hall and they told us that we were banned from playing Green Hall ever again after that. So man, I can at least say we got banned from Green Hall, I guess.
Yeah. See, you guys missed a merch opportunity right there. You guys could have had like banned from Green Hall t-shirts.
I know. We should have, but we were young, we didn't know anything. So we were just kind of like, hey, we're in a band. It's fun. Let's play music. And you think about like merchandise or anything like that. So we were definitely pretty green at that time.
Yeah, pun intended.
Yeah.
This episode is sponsored by Smith Iron and Design. It's owned and operated by one of my good friends, Aaron Smith, and his dad, Sonny. As the name implies, Smith Iron and Design specializes in creating custom metal and woodwork. They have a vast array of metal signs that are perfect wall decor that'll tie a room together. They design everything from welcome signs to family crests, flags, and Texas cutouts. They have a series of these metal wreaths that are perfect for your front door, and you are able to change them out depending on the season. Are you a sports fan? Well, there's nothing better than having a giant logo of your team on the wall of your den or office. When it comes to signage, the possibilities are really endless. What you should really do, though, is head over to smithironanddesign.com to get a look at their vast portfolio. That's smithironanddesign.com. I'll throw a link into the show notes as well. They don't just do signs either. Some of the smaller items are custom bottle openers and keychains. Then they also have bookshelves, TV stands, nightstands, and fire pits. It was about a year ago, Aaron built me a custom shelf. I needed something new to store some of my vinyl, and everything I had come across, either the shelves weren't big enough for LPs, or it looked too bland or cheaply made, or, to be perfectly honest, too expensive. So I wound up talking with Aaron, and about a week later, I was able to pick up this custom shelf unit that's just been amazing. It's incredibly sturdy, has a bit of a rustic feel. In my opinion, one of the best parts was just having so much control in the process. You can get them as tall as you want with the shelves at the perfect depth and length. Again, for me, this was for storing vinyl, so they had to be a certain height and depth. I've been thinking about getting a custom bookshelf companion piece soon as well. Now, for the most part, they primarily serve the Lubbock area and the South Plains, but for some of their smaller pieces, they're able to ship nationwide as well. Again, smithironanddesign.com. Now back to the show.
I don't know if you want to talk about this or not, but Jeff was telling me one time, like you guys had hired Tommy Allsup to produce a record, and that just kind of never happened.
Yes. Yeah.
What
Oh, go ahead.
I said no. Like, just what was that story? How did that?
So we were friends with Tommy. I guess he ended up moving to Snyder, or kind of in between Fluvanna and Snyder. And he knew Amanda really well from, the Bob Wills thing. And also just like there was like a fiddle camp that she used to go teach at, and he would go and teach guitar and stuff. So she knew him, and we ended up befriending him because, Tommy was like probably the coolest 72-year-old man I've ever met in my entire life. He's one of those guys that is great at everything he does. He's one of the best guitar players I've ever seen in my life. And, but he's 72 going on 26. So, he loved to get drunk with us and smoke cigars and sit there and play music with us and everything. So we ended up, he had a studio, in Azle, Texas, which is around the Fort Worth area. And we ended up going in, we were going to record the songs there. And for some reason, we went in and we did like 1 or 2 sessions, I think. And it just didn't have what we were looking for, I guess. The guy who was doing the engineering, it just didn't work out. It wasn't anybody's fault or anything. It was just kind of one of those things where it's just like not quite the sound we were wanting to go after. It was definitely more kind of thin sounding, and we definitely wanted like big guitars and big drums and all of that. So we ended up not, doing it, but Tommy was always a really great friend with us. I've got a good story about the time that Tommy also nearly died or got killed in my show. You want to hear that story?
Yeah, of course. Let's go.
All right. So we were playing this festival in Dallas, and it was like it was in multiple different venues, kind of like a smaller version of like South by Southwest or something like that. And so we were playing, and played a great show. There was tons of people, and Tommy's son, Austin, also, I don't know if you know him. He's a good musician as well, and he's a good guy, but him and his buddy, and then our buddy Chris Wrights and our buddy Guitar Man, who used to play drums for us. Yeah, Guitar Man used to play drums for us, but they were all in there, and they were getting drunk and having a good time. Well, they ended up taking their shirts off during our set in the bar, and I guess they had bumped into some like rough looking dudes and kind of almost gotten in a fist fight in the bar. And I guess they ended up breaking it up or whatever, but I didn't know this. We were playing. So we get off stage and, go to the merch stand and, I get a beer, and then they want to go in the back and, back to the van and smoke a bowl. And I'm like, okay. So we ended up leaving to go out to the van, which was parked behind the venue. And Chris Wrights, my buddy, an old roommate, he like slams the door on his way out. Well, I guess these guys thought that he did that towards them again. And I had no idea anything was going on. So we're sitting in the van, and all of a sudden I see probably 5 or 6 just huge dudes walking out towards our van. And I'm like, oh shit. So I just tell the dudes, hey guys, I'll handle this. If they don't have a problem with me, I'll get out and I'll talk to them. So I'm outside the van talking to these dudes and basically have them, talked off, and the guy was really cool with me. He's like, man, you guys sounded great. I don't have an issue with you. It's just your boys being ridiculous. I was like, yeah, I know. They're just drunk. Let's go back in the bar. I'll buy all you guys a beer. We'll just, no problem. Well, right then when they were about to turn around, Austin, so I guess a couple nights before we had stolen one of those Coronita salt and pepper shaker bottles from some restaurant. Well, Austin dumps all the salt and pepper out and jumps out of the van and starts swinging these Coronita bottles at this dude's head. And this guy ducks and just lays one into Austin, punches him in the face. And then it was on, just like a huge brawl. Everyone's punching. I'm trying to break all these people up. The bartender and the bouncer end up having to come back out there. And during all this melee and everything, Tommy comes out there, and he's arguing with this guy who punched Austin, and I'm trying to hold Austin back. And Tommy, which a lot of the old school musicians, they always carried a gun in their boot. Well, Tommy had a 38 in his boot, so he's arguing and pushing on this guy, and this guy's arguing back and pushing on Tommy. And so Tommy reaches down into his boot and pulls out this 38. Well, this guy reaches back behind him and pulls out a 9mm. And I'm just sitting there like, great. So the guy who flips a coin with Richie Valens to get on an airplane dies at a Thrift Store Cowboys show. You know what I mean? It's like, I would never be able to live that down. It was the most insane thing. And so eventually we got them to put their guns away, and they went one way and we went the other way. But we were just like, what a nightmare situation, it could have ended up a lot worse than it did, for sure.
Oh, definitely. Yeah. It goes two routes. Yeah. He either dies at a Thrift Store show or he becomes like
kills somebody. Yeah. Either
Billy
one.
Joe
It's just
Shaver
like,
route,
yeah. So
man, I was going to bring something up and I completely blanked. Oh, I was going to ask, on these, what record would that have been had y'all gone that route of him producing?
it would have been the Great American Desert.
Okay. Yeah.
Yeah. So all those songs on there, there was, I think, one or two songs that we didn't end up recording. And then there was like one or two or three songs that we ended up recording that weren't going to be on that album. So.
Yeah. Now you guys like really found your sound when you guys went out to Arizona and started recording out there. Did you guys feel like that was a turning point, or was that always just something like in hindsight?
Well, it's just kind of one of those things where, like, for us anyways, like, our first two albums we did both in Lubbock, and they sound fine and everything, but it was just kind of the whole taking a whole year to record an album where you're just, because a lot of things change. And so you're basically just, saving up money to get some more recording time and then somebody going in there. So it ends up taking way longer than you think it does. And so it was when we were on tour with the Vodka, or we played a show with them. It was before our tour, but we played one of their shows in Denver with them. And we were eating, eating lunch with them or brunch or something. And they had mentioned that because we were talking about recording, and they were like, "Oh, you should check out Wavelab. That's where we just did our last one, and it sounds amazing." And told us like, Calexico records there. And so we were like, okay. So we looked into it, and Craig Schumacher, he's the guy who runs Wavelab. Great dude, great engineer, great producer. And I mean, it was way more affordable than it was to do it in Lubbock, to be honest with you. Because he charged by the day instead of the hour. So we ended up just going out there, and luckily we had a guy who was a guy named Jason Isbell who lived in LA, and he was kind of managing us at the time. So his parents actually lived in Tucson. So we actually ended up getting to stay with them for the whole, 9 days that we were out there. So we didn't have to, pay for hotel rooms or anything like that. So it ended up working out great. But I mean, his studio, it's just very open concept. He had, any kind of instrument you can imagine, he had it there. He had probably 5 or 6 different drum kits. Tons of guitars, tons of bass. Everything analog. So, there was nothing in there really that was digital at all. So that was one of the things that we really wanted to do, is just like try and get like an old school sound. So basically everything you hear on Lay Low is completely analog. It was recorded analog. He mixed it by hand, and nobody does that anymore. So it was a pretty amazing process because, once you get everything recorded and also with, doing it to tape, you only have 16 tracks. You can't go over 16 tracks. It just doesn't work. So you had to be very picky and choosy about, what all needed to be on there. So it kind of made us, sit there and kind of almost simplify things in a way. And plus he was really great about recording drums and using very minimal, mics. But I always, Calexico is one of my favorite bands. And one thing that always stood out to me with Calexico is just like their drums sound so great on those records. And I always wondered how they, got that drum sound. And it turns out it was just the room. He would just mic the room, and it sounds great. So, but yeah, it was, we did it all, we recorded and mixed it all in 9 days. So it's just kind of, we were there, we were doing 13 hours a day, a lot of times going in at like 10 o'clock and, leaving at, 11, sometimes midnight, so it really, got us in there and made us concentrate and really, work on it. So yeah, I mean, it definitely changed the way that, for definitely our recorded sound, and it definitely kind of changed the way that we went about, like when we're going to record, how we can kind of figure out exactly what needs to be in there and what needs to be left out.
Yeah. That record is just so sonically tight. Like it is such a cohesive record. And I've always kind of thought of it as like, you could almost listen to it in two ways. You could listen to it as a singer-songwriter alt country record, or really like it's almost like a post-rock record in a lot of ways. Yeah,
for sure. Cause I mean, just the guitar sounds and tones, and then, having the pedal steel, but there's, we put like an EBO on his pedal steel on a couple of songs. There's a song where he's playing pedal steel, and he ran his pedal steel through a Leslie organ. And so part of the song, when it's just, when it's not spinning, it sounds like a pedal steel. And then he would just hit the switch. Craig would hit the switch whenever he wanted it to start spinning. And it almost sounded like like keys or an organ. And so it's just like, there's a lot of different things that he brought to the table that kind of expanded it sonically, for sure.
Was that one of those things where, for like the first time, or maybe not even necessarily the first time, but like where it was, the record sounded like what you thought the band sounded like in your mind?
Yes. Yeah. And it's also the first time when, because, before we went out there, because we knew, we're only paying for this certain amount of time, and we only had this, a certain amount of money. So we definitely, it was the first time when we like sat down and rehearsed all of those songs ahead of time. So, we probably worked on those songs for a good 2 to 3 weeks before we even went out there, just running through them over and over. And then, once we got in there, some of that still ended up changing while we were there, but it definitely made everything a lot tighter, and it definitely came out the way that, it's something that I'm still proud of, and it still sounds great. So it definitely sounds more like Thrift Store Cowboys to me than definitely our first two albums that came out.
Yeah. I've always thought that like Layla was I need to actually put this out sometime. Probably the best, or like in at least the top 3 records of Lubbock in the last 25 years or so. It's just
thank you.
Masterpiece, and speaking of like Lubbock, obviously, Lubbock has always been such a when it comes to like the art scene, the music scene, you have all these different kind of bands, these different sounding bands, but like they all it's a tight knit community in a lot of ways.
Right.
What can you go into some old stories of these old Lubbock guys?
Well, when we first started out, we would, there was a couple of bands that we used to play with quite a bit. One was, Watermelon Fast Bass. I met those dudes out at South Plains, and they were doing some really, really creative, interesting things, especially for, talking about the early 2000s. Definitely influenced by like Ween and Weezer, the old school Weezer stuff, but they were great, and they were just, it's kind of like our, brother band for a while. There's another band, more bluegrass, called Cut in the Grass, that played out there as well. And we used to play at Einstein's. That was kind of the place to play back in the day before, the Blue Light became the Blue Light that we all know now.
I guess also to like, not to cut you off, but to set the table, I guess, is that back in the early 2000s, and especially like more or so in the 90s, Lubbock was more of a rock and roll band or a rock and roll town than a Texas country.
Oh, for
town.
Sure.
So like that, it felt like there was a little bit more, like it's definitely progressed that way. But back then there was a little bit more, like there's more rock bands.
Definitely. I mean, most of the bands that, I knew or played with, in the early 2000s were all pretty much, rock bands. There wasn't really a whole lot of country bands. I mean, the only one I can think of that we actually, played some shows with back in the day was the Ben Atkins bands. And they were great too. I mean,
Yeah.
they had Jed Hughes playing guitar with them. You can't go wrong there. So
that's one of those, it feels like Ben Atkins is one of the forgotten early, well, I guess it's not technically early. I always say early, but one of those early like Texas country bands that was
I mean, he had
really cool stuff and kind of just I don't know, like lost some momentum there in the
decade. I mean, they had that Country Girl Angel song. They were playing that all over the state, and it was kind of one of those first, just like that was a big hit. And then, he got more into Americana stuff. And so his second album, the one with Maybell and all of that, and that was actually he put out on Rounder Records. And I think Buddy Miller produced that album, but it's great. It's a great album. But Ben, he is an interesting cat. He's one of the smartest guys I've ever met, so he went to law school. He wanted to be a firefighter. He wanted to learn German. And he's just one of those guys that when he wants to do something, he just sits down and does it. So it's just like, I think he got kind of burned out on playing music for a while. And I think now he's trying to, starting to maybe, play out a little bit more, but nothing. I don't think he, definitely doesn't want to tour or anything like that. But
yeah, I know he put out a few singles last year.
Yeah.
Late in the year. And I know, he was doing a lot of like writing with Eric Willis. Because I think he's been kind of like from the Wichita Falls area, I think.
Yeah. So yeah, he's, I can't remember,
around that area. I don't know what town, but yeah.
Yeah. But he's from a small town around Wichita Falls. And I think he lives in Wichita Falls now.
Yeah. I remember talking with Eric about, I guess they were, not the last record, but the record before that Eric was working on. They had done a whole bunch of co-writing on that record, and I think he's a great writer, and he's a really good guitar player now too. I mean, and he's playing pedal steel and everything. So I mean, he's definitely learned a lot. When he first started playing, it was just a lot of GC&D on acoustic guitar, and now I mean he's a picker. So yeah, absolutely. Going back to early Lubbock or early 2000s Lubbock, what were some of those bands that you think that were kind of that been lost to time simply because it was still like in a time where it was hard to put out your own record?
Yeah, I mean, there's some bands that were playing and got some notoriety even a little bit before we started playing. There's a band called Spilling Poetry they were great. Just a really good rock band, kind of like your late 90s alternative rock bands.
Yeah. I know Jeff sent me those records, and yeah, it's one of those like, oh shit, I didn't know we could do this in Lubbock.
Yeah. I mean, they were very talented. I mean, there's a lot of just, of course, One Wolf and Daniel Markham doing everything that he's doing, and he's so prolific and has put out all, albums that completely sound different, and just because he wants them to, he wants them to sound the way he does. And I totally respect that. And I think it's awesome. I mean, he's one of my favorite songwriters and guitar players. I mean, he's definitely, filled in on guitar and bass for us on tours and different things like that. And he's one of my best friends. So, I would definitely, throw them out there for sure. Yeah, I mean, and then you have guys like, Will Clark Green, who, everybody remembers him when he was just, this smiling, goofy dude who was, hosting the songwriter jam at the Blue Light. And now, he's a big rock star on the tour bus. It's pretty awesome to see that,
Yeah. It's, in all of this stuff, like I felt that, I guess, like over time of being a journalist and everything, I think you realize that it takes talent and hard work, and more than anything else, it just takes perseverance and like luck. Like,
Yeah.
you know what I mean?
Oh yeah,
And
definitely.
I
I
think
mean,
like that's the margins are so small. Like one band being, just really successful, and another band kind of just being, marginally successful, or
right. I mean,
whatever happened to insert name here.
exactly. And like that's the thing about with any band, it's more luck than anything. You just think about how many great bands are out there, and I do this, or me and Jess do this all the time, where it's just like, man, this band is so good. Why aren't they, more popular or more famous, or playing bigger venues, or you go and watch a band at on the stage, and there's like 10 people in the crowd, and you're just like, this is bullshit. There should be way more people for this band than that. But I mean, it's it's a lot of luck. It's a lot of networking too. It's finding the right people that know how to, when you want to put out an album, and you want to, there's a lot of steps and a lot of money, and there's a lot of things that go into it in order for it to be successful. I mean, you have to spend money to make money, basically, and that's one of the hardest parts for, smaller bands that are just trying to do everything on their own. It's just like, there comes a point when, for us, it's like, well, do we spend money on radio promotion, or do we spend money on publicity? Because we can't do both. We don't have enough money to put this album out the exact right way. So you just kind of have to be picky and choose the way that you think will work best for you. But definitely luck has a lot to do with it. And then, just playing, I mean, that's the thing. You look at a band like American Aquarium, who's, they play, they're from North Carolina, and I've known BJ for a long time. And, they play out here forever, and they were just kind of spinning their wheels for a while, but they just kept at it and kept at it. And, once they hit Texas and blew up there, it's kind of just, they're on an upward arc for sure, So, I mean, you just kind of have to just keep working at it no matter what, no matter if you are losing money and you've got to try to figure it out, but it's definitely worth it. I'd say, just to keep playing and doing it, I would say.
Yeah. Like you have to, in anything, like there is the being available is like the best. It's like the easiest skill you can have is to be available. And obviously that means playing a whole bunch and working on that, and just being in the moment, and
playing free shows, playing festivals for no money, playing, anything that you can do, opening up for bigger bands. A lot of times, everybody wants to open for a big band, so you can play in front of a, huge crowd. But, half the time, you're only getting like $100 to $125 a show. You're not making a lot of money doing that, but you're hoping that you can, at least sell a few $100s worth of merch as well. So,
yeah. To go back to the Lubbock thing, obviously when you guys moved out to Knoxville, I guess very soon after there, Ross Cooper moved to Nashville, and
he was already living in, so he was living in Nashville, probably, I'd say a year, maybe 2 years before we moved out here.
Yeah. Long story short, though, like you guys became like really good friends over there in Tennessee, simply because, not necessarily simply because, but, a lot to do with both being from West Texas.
Right.
I guess like what's it been like, I guess, being out there with another Texan that you just can kind of like always just go, oh, you know what I'm talking about. Because there's something to it. There's I think like there's always something to, just not even having to talk about it, but like just knowing like, oh, you're from the same place as I am. There's some familiarity there.
Oh, for sure. I mean, like the thing about Ross is, so when Ross lived in Lubbock, I mean, I knew of him, and but mainly it was just like he would come into Ralph's and we'd chat about music occasionally, but it wasn't like we weren't like really good friends or anything like that. And then once we moved out here, we've just because he lives in Nashville and I live in Knoxville, and we do so many events in Nashville. We just always hang with them. I mean, most of the time when we, if we're going through Nashville or, flying out of Nashville, we usually just crash at Ross's place. And then vice versa, we've gotten him out to, play some shows out in Knoxville, played some shows at the distillery before. And so, he's just a great dude. And I mean, his music is, it's his last couple albums are just fantastic. So, I mean, I'm hoping that, he can just keep playing and keep touring and keep it up. And I mean, I wish nothing but the best for that guy, because he's definitely one of my really good friends out here now. Yeah. But yeah, talking to him about Lubbock, it's just like, basically all we do is just, have fun, drink some beers, and talk about like tons of stories and ridiculous times and all the people that we used to hang out with and all that stuff back in the day. So it's always a crazy time and a good time as well. So
yeah, I told Ross this. He got so much better once he moved to Nashville, and I think it's because he had such just a magnified focus on becoming a songwriter and becoming that 24/7. Like that was on his mind. Not school, not having to take classes, and obviously
right.
He's got the rodeo background, so he was doing that for a while, just trying to juggle all these different things at once. And then when he moved to Nashville, it was like this is what I came here for.
Yeah. And I mean, and that's the thing about there's a lot of really great music in Nashville. There's a lot of really terrible music in Nashville as well, but it's just like, you have to, but living there, it's almost like a rite of passage for a lot of people. And so it takes time, when he moved there, it's just like, yeah, you want to do that, but you have to network, you have to go out to shows and meet people, and he did that, he worked on it and ended up, going in and writing, doing songwrites with folks, and, some of them he really enjoyed, and they got some really good material out of, and some of it he was just like, I don't even want my name on that song, and so it's like, but at the same time, at least it's like, it's making you sit down and, it's like your job. You have to sit down and you have to write and do your thing. And through that and just through meeting people, his band they're all just like ace players as well. So, I mean, just the thing about Nashville is, the Nashville people hate Knoxville people. It's really weird. Cause they think that we have it easy because, if you're a musician from Knoxville, you haven't put in your work and your time in Nashville. And just like, to me, I'm like, well, it's kind of the same as like living in Lubbock or living in Austin. It's just like, well, A, I can't afford to live in Austin, and B, it's so oversaturated with people that I really don't want to live there. So I don't care what they say about it. I mean, I love Knoxville, and there's no way I would trade it for Nashville any day. But I'm glad to see that like Ross has totally embraced it and is just kicking ass out there.
Yeah. Speaking of Rodney Parker, Ross Cooper is like, in a lot of ways, very similar to Rodney, like especially like sonically.
Yeah.
They're like because you mentioned his band, like they're so damn good, and it's almost like a lot of his songs are obviously about, cowboy stuff,
right,
rodeo stuff, West Texas, country, but like that's also kind of like a garage rock band.
Yeah. So. And I love that because it's like, writing about something that that you live in your surroundings and how you grew up and all of that. But, just because you think, oh, it's this is a rodeo song, it needs to be just straight country. That, I love the fact that they're like, no, I can write a rodeo song and make it sound like an indie rock song. And it still has the same, still that same vibe and that same feel. And I think that that's kind of something that we tried to pride ourselves on too, is just like when we were recording, it's like we wanted everything to be open, so I, one of my favorite things that people have said to me, in the past is just like, they'll text me and say, yeah, I'm driving through West Texas and I put on, Lay Low While Calling Or Creeping. And it's like the perfect background music to this, to this driving out here for the landscape. And so like, that's kind of why I think that it's like, to me, instead of it being like, oh, you have to do this, you have to do that, or it has to be a certain sound. It's like the world, the world's your canvas and you have the paintbrush, you can paint whatever you want. And so that, like with Rodney and with Ross, it's just, you can still get that vibe and that feeling of what they're wanting to portray in their songs, but it doesn't have, it doesn't sound like country or the way it's supposed to, or how some people think that it should sound. And so it just comes across as like this just completely different sounding, music, which is great.
Yeah. I guess like the one thing that people maybe can get wrong about West Texas is that they think that West Texas only sounds like one thing. And there's a lot of different ways to sound like West Texas. Like when I think of West Texas, I think of y'all, and I think of like the same thing for like Explosions in the Sky.
Yeah.
Or like another side of West Texas, you think of like at the drive-in.
Yeah. And then Terry Allen, Buddy Holly, it's just like Don Williams. I mean, it's just, it can be, but yeah, you're right. Like Explosions Sky, At the Drive-In, Mars Volta. I mean, it's all West Texas for sure.
Yeah. Even like, I still like I think like the perfect Lubbock record, quote unquote, perfect Lubbock record is Tillers by Wade Parks. To me, that's like what sounds like what specifically what Lubbock sounds like, in my opinion. Like
for sure.
Best,
I mean,
like, Lubbock songwriter record.
Yeah, to me, it's like that one, or of course Lubbock on Everything, or the Dust Bowl Ballads by Butch Hancock. Those three, like if I was going to, come to somebody from Knoxville was like, hey, what's Lubbock like? It's like, here, listen to those three albums, and that's Lubbock right there,
Right. Yeah. Speaking of like the Lubbock stuff, you've not made one of them yet, but hopefully the next one, the 806 songwriter stuff. That's supposed to be. Hopefully we get one done this year.
Yeah, no kidding.
Hopefully in the fall, something like that. If there's time. I don't know if there will be time simply because of I don't know. I'm not going to get on the sidetrack there, but if it's going to fit because of festivals being moved and everything. But
right.
When it comes to writing, like what have you been doing lately? Have you been able to take some time and work on some stuff?
Yeah, a little bit. So I've just been kind of nothing's like. There's a couple of songs that I've finished, and then just kind of coming up with ideas, trying to think of writing in like a bigger picture. So almost like almost in a concept type way, I guess, like having a central theme and then trying to write a group of songs around that central theme, but still not basically where you can take all those songs individually and listen to them, and you can have your own idea about what those songs are about. But in my mind, this is what, this is the theme of the whole thing. So yeah, I've just been trying to like come up with some stuff. Like I've been trying to write, about some of my some of my ancestors that all, kind of grew up in northeastern New Mexico. Just trying to take some of those like good stories and everything and trying to turn those into some songs. And it's been difficult, but it's just like anything else. You just got to sit down and keep working at it. And eventually, you'll come up with some stuff too. So I'm excited. I think maybe we can try to record some stuff. Tugboat has actually been working on a home recording studio at his place. Since he can't play any gigs right now, he's just trying to, he's got a pretty sweet little setup so he can, folks who just need some drums on a certain album or whatever can just basically, send those over to him and he can record them in his house. So hopefully we can maybe, sit down and actually get some stuff laid down this year, which would be great.
Yeah, of course. Yeah. We need another thrift store record or
it's only been 10 years, it's only been 10 years. So
yeah. I know if I just went out here in Lubbock, I could pick 100 people and like 100 people would say, yeah, I need that next thrift store record. So
yeah.
Yeah, you got, I guess, plenty of time to get something done especially if we're shut down for a while. Exactly.
So hopefully we can, get everything, kind of recorded and hopefully, get some of the Lubbock folks to record on it from there and just kind of send it back and forth and kind of see what we can come up with for sure. So
yeah, for sure. Well,
hopefully it doesn't suck.
All right, thanks for listening to another episode of New Slang. Be sure to check out the Thrift Store Cowboys catalog. Check out episode sponsors Smith Iron and Design and Wickers Jalapeno Jelly. We'll see you later this week.